Hi, this is Steph from the Luciferian page, and I am doing a video called Hallowed Be Thy Name, and it is about the book Hallowed Be Thy Name, and it's Lucifer and Origins and Revelation by Priscilla Vogelbacher. And I had been wanting to do a video on this for some time because I really stress that people really should look into this. So within these pages comes the most blasphemous and crucial theological disclosure of the past 2,000 years. Validates Lucifer as our creator, savior, and God. So the author is not Luciferian, but she felt compelled to actually do a book on Lucifer. And what I want to start out with is it's got a lot of biblical passages that can go along with what she is talking about. There seems to be this rivalry between two gods, Yahweh and Lucifer, which are brothers. And so she mostly calls Lucifer Enki and Yahweh Enlil, which is the two names that were used in Sumerian times. And one of the things I really want to touch on is when she talks about the tree in the Garden of Eden, she points out that the tree of garden and the tree of good and evil in the Garden of Eden may actually be something close to a mushroom. And here is a fresco from an old building that shows something that looks like a mushroom type of thing. When you read the passages in Genesis, it says that their eyes were open. So it does kind of sound like it's possibly some kind of thing that causes hallucinogenic qualities, opening the eyes. And so, first of all, there was a war between Tiamat, which was, if we look at this from alien terms, she would be the queen of the reptilians. And basically there was a battle between the gods and the reptilians. She was defeated, and kind of goes on from there. The world is created, and she also talks about how Eden was actually something like a petting zoo. There was no death in the garden because everything was hand-fed. Now, imagine in a zoo, animals don't kill each other in a zoo because they're hand-fed by the zookeepers. So if we look at some kind of alien experiment going on where different species are held, and Adam and Eve, as well as predators, are also hand-fed, so they didn't experience any type of death. These animals were obviously tame. Adam could go near a lion and nothing would happen. It just seems like this was some kind of experiment where he took two humans and tried to brainwash them pretty much into following him. It's not that other humans didn't exist. Um, what happened was there was Lilith, and then she ran away and escaped, and um, ended up having sex with Samael, and or Satan, as most people would see him as. Now, sometimes she uses Samael to describe Lucifer. I believe that Samael is actually the real name of what people perceive as Satan, and I see them as two different beings. But because she's using a lot of Jewish passages here, the Hebrews did not have the term Lucifer. That's purely Latin for light bringer. So the complication is, of course, the Hebrew term is going to be more likely Satan, which means adversary, Satan, Ha-Satan, or Samael. But basically, they're two different beings. So, of course, what happens was, that failed. Obviously, Lilith escaped. And Yahweh decides to take another woman. And for some reason, I don't know why he would bother doing this. He drugged Adam or something and claimed to have created Eve from his rib. I'm not really sure what his logic was. I guess maybe he wanted Adam to believe that maybe he was just spontaneously creating things as he went along. So, part of this rivalry that's happening between the two brothers, Yahweh and Lucifer, is there are biblical passages where she kind of points out things that are interesting. She states that, Enki is a god of water, of sea, so he's associated with water. She talks about, Capricorn being kind of his symbol, and Aquarius. So he's crossed between Aquarius and Capricorn because he's associated with water. And there is a biblical passage where I think it might be in the Old Testament somewhere. She talks about, I'm not really 100% sure what passages exactly, but she talks about it, and he says something like, do not worship anything in the water or under the water. So she believes that he is actually talking about his brother. And so she talks about, of course, Yahweh being the Lord of the world, it's Yaldabaoth, and of course, Lucifer being more of a savior figure. And what's really interesting is there is a book that I believe it's called The Forbidden Books of Eden or something about Adam and Eve, and she really goes into this. It was a banned book in most of our Bibles here, and what she really goes off on is and look, I have read this book myself. It's actually part of the Ethiopian Bible. I believe that's the only Bible where it appears in. I believe it was banned from all other books. Because there are multiple Holy Bibles in the world, some of them containing Apocrypha, not Apocrypha, and, different texts. And so this book talks about Adam and Eve being expelled from the Garden of Eden. Eve tries to atone for her sins by standing in water and basically fasting. And Lucifer says, you're wasting your time. He's not going to let you back in there. They don't know what to do. I mean, they're tame. It's like taking a pet and throwing it out on the street and expecting it to, survive. I mean, maybe a cat could do that, but basically that's what happened. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to hunt. They don't know how to grow food, forage, you know. So Lucifer basically, is trying to help them and all that, even though the book kind of shows them in a negative light. Is actually showing them the way to survive in the wilderness. At one point, Adam and Eve attempt suicide a couple of times, and Yahweh, of course, won't let them die. He keeps them alive, So it's part of their punishment in a way. You're not going to easily get out of this, pretty much, is what he's saying. So there are some interesting things that happen in this book. And one of the things I want to touch on that is so horrific is at one point Lucifer marries Adam and Eve. So Adam asks, Lucifer, look, how do I stay with Eve? I want to tie this relationship together. Now, they hadn't had sex yet, apparently. So Eve was a virgin. And Yahweh got angry because Lucifer actually married them. And so she goes into he's furious. Yahweh is furious. So Yahweh himself was the first to take Eve. So he found the woman as she was preparing herself for her husband. The two of them were afraid to denounce Yaldabaoth. The first ruler saw the young woman standing next to Adam. The first ruler defiled Eve. In other words, so there's also a thing here, come, let's ejaculate our semen in her, and they chased her. So Yahweh's furious, and he rapes Eve. So he took away her virginity. Apparently she hadn't had sex yet. And he got to her before Adam. And, this was just malicious behavior because he was angry. So you can kind of see why this book was taken out of so many Bibles, honestly. This is a very controversial book that really shows the creator in a bad light, something most biblical scholars do not even want to discuss, honestly. But there's also a weird thing in here about Cain. And apparently Lucifer had sex with Eve. This one was probably more consenting. This is after Yahweh did this. And So he had a child. Cain was not his firstborn. He actually had a different child, and um, something weird happened. He left. He left this child. His child wasn't very old, but he was walking, and probably around 4 years old, I would say. um, so, well, the first human pair were still in paradise. It once happened that Samael, accompanied by a lad, approached Eve and requested her to keep a watchful eye upon his little son till he should return. Eve gave him the promise. Um, so he found her with the child howling and screaming as little children often do. When asking Eve of the child, she told him it was Samuel's. Adam became annoyed at the child's wailing. His annoyance only intensified as the cries escalated. The text state he killed the child, but it may have been that the youngling was unconscious. So at the vexation, he dealt the little one a blow that killed him, but the corpse did not cease to wail and weep, nor did it cease when Adam cut it up into bits to rid himself of the plague. Adam cooked the remains, and he and Eve ate them. Yes, I'm talking about cannibalism here. So they took Lucifer's son and literally cooked and ate him. And upon finishing their meal, of course, he returns demanding to see his son. They stated ignorance of the child's existence, denying everything. But of course, he knew they were lying. So he knew that basically his child was murdered by them. So, of course, his second child with Eve would be Cain, technically. But there's so much information in this book. It's highly recommend anybody. You know, everybody needs to read this. Everybody. So, just great stuff. You know, it's got stuff about Quetzalcoatl, which was kind of a Christ figure to the Aztecs and the Mayans. He was a sun god, and he appeared to them at one point like Yeshua, and Yeshua, which is Jesus. That's technically his real name, would be Yeshua, because there's no J in Hebrew. So kind of a lot of things here going on. But anyway, like Yeshua, Quetzalcoatl promised them that, you know, he would come back one day, and of course his symbol was the cross. So what happened, of course, when the Spanish Inquisition came over there during their conquest, they ended up killing these people off because they saw them as, you know, unworthy pagans that were sacrificing humans to the altar. And then, of course, the Aztecs thought that they were gods because they were blonde hair, blue eyed, and they carried crosses, you know, and they associated them with perhaps the messengers of Quetzalcoatl. So, a lot of really good information here. But going back to the Adam and Eve story. Um, Yahweh actually teaches Adam and Eve to sacrifice, blood sacrifice. He has them cut themselves and then smear the blood on an altar as the literally the first sacrifice. Um, so there's a lot of bad things that this book has in it that really makes him villainized, even though it's used in a lot of well, it's used by the Ethiopians. So um, anyway, I cannot stress it enough that people read that book and definitely read this. Um, so So anyway, the fact that this woman felt compelled to do a book about Lucifer is amazing. She states that she is not a Luciferian. I I think I'm not sure what she is. I think she might be atheist or something, but she felt compelled to do a book about this because Lucifer has been villainized, and it's it's painfully obvious that the real bad guy here is Yahweh, or Yaldabaoth, and by the many names that he's called. And so let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching.